Megaman Soccer is kind of bizarre. If you look at it as a soccer game, it's really bad. If you look at it as a Mega Man game, it's also really bad. And yet, it's actually a lot of fun to play. Honestly, I like it. And you know, it seriously feels weird to say that I kind of like this game. I mean, there are a ton of things wrong with this game. It really shouldn't be this much fun to play. I'll start off with the biggest problem, which is the zoomed in perspective. The screen is zoomed in so far that you can't really see anything. There are times where you don't control anybody on the screen and you can't figure out where your player is. And it's really, really hard to come up with a strategy when you literally cannot see anything. Now, the game has this radar map, at the top of the screen that should theoretically help with the confusing perspective. However, it just doesn't work. So in the first half, your team is the blue team. That makes sense, especially if you're doing the story mode and your team is nothing but Mega Man. However, in the second half, your team is now the red team. The game doesn't warn you about this anywhere. You've got to just know that the team changes colors on the map. And you might as well just throw away the instruction manual. It's absolutely no help at all. Now, the other major problem with this game is that you can't change the character you control when you're on defense, and sometimes that can become a really, really big problem. Well, I guess it doesn't matter so much if all you have to choose from is Mega Man. And the game usually does a good job of giving you control over the right guy. But you can never control your keeper, which is a major flaw. Even if the ball is right in front of him, there's nothing you can do about it. And half the time you're going to be pushing buttons wildly, hoping that somebody you control will be close to the ball. I feel like this game was rushed out, maybe rushed out in time for like the 1994 World Cup, since it came out like 2 months before it began. Now that reminds me of a certain football management simulation. I'm not sure which one that could be. Anyway, the other problem with this game might surprise you. It's actually too easy. At first you're frustrated, sure. But if you experiment, you'll realize that there are sweet spots you can shoot the ball from. This diagram from a walkthrough on GameFAQs kind of explains it. You want to shoot from the corners of the circle on top of the penalty area. When you figure that out, you can score a goal almost every single time. Meanwhile, if you try to play it like a normal soccer game, you'll simply never score. So the thing about this game is that it really isn't a soccer game. You've got to think of it as a continual action game that kind of goes from one little stage to the next under the time limit. And when you understand that that's the way it's really played, you can use that to your advantage. So I'll show you what I mean. If the ball is in your territory, you always want to punt it. The vast majority of the time, punting it will set up this particular one-on-one situation. Seriously, if anything strange or difficult or bizarre is happening, just punt the ball. It will reset everything. It also becomes easy after a while to predict what the computer players are going to do. The AI in this game seems to go through the same cycles over and over. It's pretty easy once you know what to expect. Anyway, there are a couple of other little problems here and there that I probably should mention. The hit detection seems to be off. You can tackle right through a guy without hitting him, which is strange. Of course, when you get a feel for how this works, you can also use it to your advantage on offense. Also, the clock does some pretty strange things. The time doesn't run when the keeper has the ball, for example. Even though it's technically 5 minutes per half, the average game takes more like 20 minutes to finish. Okay, now there are two major questions here. First of all, is this the worst soccer game on the Super Nintendo? And second, is this the worst Mega Man game? In terms of soccer games, Mega Man Soccer is really bad. Capcom actually came out with the better Super Nintendo soccer game right around the same time. This is Capcom Soccer Shootout, which is just strictly better in all aspects. So I really have a hard time understanding why in the world the same company came out with the same sort of game at the same time. I'm really not quite sure who made that decision at Capcom. Of course, Mega Man Soccer is nowhere near the first FIFA game on Super Nintendo, and it's not even in the same ballpark as Konami's International Soccer Superstars, which came out a couple of years later. And yes, before I get more hate mail, you guys are right. Sensible Soccer on the Super Nintendo is maybe the best on the platform. World Cup USA 94 is basically Sensible Soccer with a different skin. It's literally the same game underneath. And World Cup Striker has a similar viewpoint, though it's way too fast. It feels like soccer on meth. Even Jaleco's Super Goal 2 has better graphics and play control than Mega Man Soccer. So in other words, in terms of being a soccer game, Mega Man Soccer is really bad. In fact, this might actually be the worst soccer game on the platform. But it's also technically not really a soccer game. So how does it compare to the other Mega Man games? Honestly, it doesn't compare very well. So if you're my age, you probably have fond memories of playing the old Mega Man games on the NES. It's pretty clear that Mega Man Soccer was designed for those of us who remember the real old series. After all, almost all of the characters come from the old series of games. But the biggest problem here is that Capcom came out with a much better Mega Man game on the Super Nintendo just a couple months before this game came out. And if you compare the two games, you'll see just how bad Mega Man Soccer really is. So if you're my age and you grew up in North America, you almost certainly remember this magazine issue. When it came out, Mega Man X was instantly one of the best games on the Super Nintendo. Actually, it's still a great platform game even today after all these years. It's got a storyline that unfolds naturally. And best of all, the game is designed so that it teaches you how to play the game as you play it. I seriously think this game has an argument for being the best platforming game of all time. So anyway, what does that have to do with Mega Man Soccer? Well, it was a disappointment in large part because it didn't learn from the lessons of Mega Man X. And that's really strange because it was literally made by the same studio. Mega Man Soccer is just a soccer game, that's all. The game doesn't ease you in to help you figure out how to play and what works. The controls are relatively stiff, but that's mostly because a lot of the animations and movement is predetermined in force. The graphics are a lot worse than Mega Man X. And the sound isn't even close. But you know, at the same time, despite that major problem, there still is something that's really appealing about Mega Man Soccer, even though I think it's the worst Mega Man game. The thing that's appealing about it is that it's still just fun to play. I can't put my finger on it, but this game keeps me wanting to play despite its many flaws. Part of the fun comes in these super shots, which are different for different robots. And part of the fun comes from the computer doing totally unpredictable things. Now it does become kind of boring once you figure out the trick to scoring a ton of goals. But the overall presentation actually is not bad. The music is pretty catchy. There are a ton of play modes to choose from, more than most soccer games from 1994, and it's a game that makes you want to come back to look for more. So there's also a couple of stuff I should mention, things that really convinced me that this game was kind of rushed out. For example, when you win a match, you get this screen that says "Congratulations," a pretty silly typo. I worked hard and was able to beat Dr. Wily's team. And then the game just took me back to the first screen. So it turns out that there actually is a victory screen that's hidden in this game, but you can't actually see it when you play through it, so it's a total buzzkill. When you play a friendly, you can also see that you probably should be able to choose Dr. Wily. You can't choose him, but he's certainly there, he's just off the screen. Anyway, there are a few little things from the Mega Man series, like getting a player from the opponent's team when you win. This is similar to the way you get the boss's powers in the platform games. And it's one of the things that keeps this game fun, even though the performance is a little bit awkward. Seriously though, despite all of the bad things I've said about this game, it still is a lot of fun. I mean, it's just really confusing like that. And honestly, I really hope that somebody out there takes this concept and makes an updated version of it. If you do, you want to zoom out a little bit so, we can see the field. And it would be nice to have a game that actually resembles soccer instead of a bunch of pre-planned movements. It would also be nice to actually be able to change the guy you control on defense. But a lot of the concepts here are really good. Different guys having different abilities is kind of what gives this game its charm. In that sense, it's sort of like Dusty Diamond's All-Star Softball on the NES. That game remains popular to this day largely because of how different each of the characters are. That's really part of what gives Mega Man Soccer its charm. Anyway, this is kind of an odd game. I mean, it's a really bad sports game, and it's got to be the worst Mega Man game, but it's still a classic, so go give it a try.